Don't know what happened. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to our show today. This is the Being Healthy show, and I am Dorit. Thank you so much for being here with us, and we welcome you and trust that you will really walk away today, or run away, or sit away from exactly what we're about to explore today. This topic of fasting and feasting. Notice I didn't put fasting or feasting, but fasting and feasting is one which I think needs to be explored. There is such an overabundance of children and teenagers who are ill. There is such a huge segment of our society who absolutely forgets what it feels like to be vibrant and energetic and to get up in the morning and just jump up and just be ready to just dance their way through all the experiences of what we call a day. And for that reason, we need to look at all of the many facets of their lives that influence this. What we're about to talk about today is not just the only thing. I want to make that clear from the beginning. It's not just what we eat, it's how we eat, when we eat, with what we eat, and also it has to do with the most important part of it all, who we are, who in our essence we are, who we have determined we are, what it is about us that allows us to come out into this incredibly, stunningly beautiful world and decide that we're going to make ourselves smaller and that we're going to eat our way through lives. And then expect not to have consequences, because one of the biggest rules of life is that everything has consequences. So, this particular topic is one that has been with me since I was a child, because I used to look at grown-ups and watch how they just pillage the earth and how we tend to eat according to norms. In other words, we don't question what we're eating. We do what's familiar to us in our families or in our institutions. And nowadays, according to media, and I include social media in when I say media, I don't just mean mainstream media, I mean social media as well. And people I find on social media are being bullied into eating certain ways. I just don't understand this. There's something really strange about this. So I'm going to ask my co-hosts, who I invite to come on now, and just first introduce yourself, who you are, and then immediately ex- I'd love to you to try to explain to me and to the audience, and I want the audience comments as well. So make sure that you comment, share, and like, because at the end we will be coming to the audience for a live chat if you so desire. And so I'm going to bring on first Pete and ask Pete, what is, Pete, that you think we are doing nowadays that really allows us to be so divorced from who we are that we will eat and drink any and everything?
Mm. Disconnection, I would say. I mean, that's there's a lot involved in that. So, as you mentioned, we kind of predominantly just copycat our parents, our surroundings, and if our parents haven't, let's just say, made a better connection, better choices, then we just carry them on. However, in your experience, some of us come through with just an urge to have fruits, electric food, live food. And then, as in your experience, you shared a little bit, on the last post, forced to not, forced to the so-called norm. So I would say, if we were all educated much more, we would be guiding our children much more in a positive way in terms of so they could keep a connection, keep their senses, so they are kind of sovereign and know what is good for them themselves. And if we listened as adults and parents, really truly listened, we would learn from them. But better still, we take responsibility and learn ourselves, So it's I would say a disconnection from me and my journey, reconnecting the best I can to where I am now. I see how the foods desensitize me, or did have, and I still see now. There's always levels to our journey. So a real disconnect, and like you say, full on in the media, advocating that way of eating and making it a norm. So, and then through the movies, as we mentioned last strength, should I say, um, descents in our us, a senses again, in terms of keeping us in a shock time kind of trauma. And I didn't add, so I'm 17 years raw vegan, been running, taking the food and sauna space to festivals. So that would be my answer. Really. I mean, there's much more, but to try and keep it brief.
You don't need to keep it brief. You can keep going if you want, but I'm going to actually
Okay.
bring in Sabina, and we'll come back to you afterwards after everyone has spoken. Thanks. Sabina?
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Sabina. I am a radiant health specialist and detox coach. And what I see, we live in this very fast society. People want instant gratification and everything has to be right there. And it's no longer about, in the olden days, we used to go in the garden, we pick the food, then we create something beautiful with it. And now it's all about instant gratification. Most people just want to have their food as a push of the button in the microwave and just something out of the package that's already prepared. So it's all about fast food and processed food. And when we eat that way, this is eating dead food. It is actually no longer a food. It is a product that was created by man. So it's not really food anymore. So the big, shift has to come by eating real food again. What does Mother Nature provide? And eating all the colors of the rainbow instead of this product that is filled with chemicals and additives and preservatives and all kinds of stuff you can't even pronounce anymore. Just go in the supermarket, there's only like 5% is real food, and the 95% is all man-made products. So that is a big dilemma, and it's about people. It's actually first starts with the education. We are not educated anymore on how to eat properly, how to feed ourselves, how to nourish ourselves, how to love ourselves. Like basic education is no more available. Everything is about instant gratification, has to be fast and on the push of a button. So that's what I'm seeing here.
Thank you so much. Yes, yes, yes. And we're going to come back to that. Even if we don't manage today, we are continuing this topic next week. So we will definitely have to come back to this because those toxic, strange, artificial, synthetic chemicals, where do they go when we absorb them? And we don't just eat them, we put them on our skin. We call them creams and lotions and potions. We put them in our hair. We drink them. We eat them. We wear them, the material from which our clothes is made. These are all things that we need to start looking at. And maybe we need to consider fasting from them. And we're going to be going into that later. But before we do that, the same question originally asked will be going to you, Grant. So come on board.
Thanks, Dory. Yeah, I'm Grant Campbell from Australia. I'm an ultra marathon runner, and I've been hosting retreats, health retreats, for a long time, and I'm a life coach. And I'm very passionate about health, and fasting and feasting are topics I've spent a lot of time studying and practicing. Um, I think people are. I think the other. I think Pete and Sabina are both onto some great points. About education and the processed food definitely causes damage. But I also think there's from our earlier topics we talked about EMFs, and I think too much kind of screen time and device time. There's some damage that happens to the back of the brain actually, like if people can kind of touch the top of their head, the crown of their head, and tap it. Some people have more sensitivity there than others, and you lose that sensitivity. And I think in many ways we lose ourselves through, kind of being dulled down, being in environments where there's too much EMFs, And we've got the processed foods not supporting being nourished and having a healthy bloodstream to deliver nutrients to our body, that the things it needs. And the education is super important. But I think there's also another underlying topic of trauma and how that influences people's food choices, how they relate to themselves, to food, to others. I think some people have a severe lack of good role models in their life, which can come from books and other experiences, but largely it should be parents. And I think with parents focusing more on money and getting ahead for the family, that spending so much time away from their children, having other people raise your children in childcare services and things like that, I think that can be very damaging to children if they feel like they're not loved, or they're not supported, or they're not important to those that love them. So I think there's just so many reasons that affect people's food choices and our health. And people eat because they're hungry, eat because they're tired, eat because they're malnourished, like they need some food. But they also eat because they're disturbed, distressed, feeling lonely, feeling any disappointment, feel entitlement. There's so many reasons why people eat, because we're happy, because we're sad, because somebody passes away, because we're remembering a loved one. There's millions of different reasons why people eat, and some of them are good and some of them are not so good. And role models and education and a supportive, loving environment nurturing us as we grow, and that includes getting nurturing as adults. We need as much nurturing as children. I think they're all key things to being balanced and healthy, and developing a healthy relationship with food and with ourselves and with others. And I think also the mainstream media has a lot, they should be held responsible for that as well, and they don't do so well. The government, for example, their role to govern the people should be to help teach us how to be healthy. And I don't see that happening, not since I was a child in Australia, and they had these commercials on television called Life, Be in It. And they used to talk about getting out and walking and getting sunshine and eating bananas and all these things, but that doesn't happen anymore. So it's sad, and we need to go back to those days.
Grant, what's the name of that show in Australia? I remember it, but I can't remember the name. To do with banana, Mr. Banana, or something of the sort?
You're referring to Bananas in Pajamas?
Yes, yes. Oh, I loved that show so much. And I love that show was about, not naming fruits, because I was so into fruits as a child. Yes, I really, really loved that show. Do you still have it there?
I don't think Bananas in Pajamas is ever going to go away. We do. It's been reinvented. It comes in new forms all the time. But yeah, children always love Bananas in Pajamas. Or
Thank you
Bananas
so
in
much.
Pajamas is probably the American version, is it?
So thank you so much for that, Chiserina. You live in a retreat center and you work with children. So you probably have a different mindset and a different viewpoint about eating, because you get to deal with the families and see the children according to how their eating patterns are. You can tell a lot about the families. Are you able to do that?
Yeah, and not just the families. Thank you for asking, Dorit. But the retreat groups that come through, right? So for the past 7 years that I've moved here to Canada, I've witnessed, it's so fascinating, because a lot of them are, let's say their diets are not exactly, harmonizing for their wellness. But they come here and they know it's a vegetarian. Sometimes it depends on, it's vegan, vegetarian. It's focused on their on for the weekend or for the week. It's focused on their well-being state, and noticing how it affects them emotionally, mentally, physically. And many comments they make me chuckle. Some of the comments you'll hear the people, because they have on, like Grant and like Sabina, Pete. They have a regular diet. What's regular diet? A lot of the processed foods, and they are used to meat and all of this stuff. And so they come here and you'll hear them comment, "Oh, how delicious is this meal?" And I'm not missing the meat, or I'm not missing and they actually ask the chef, or Andrea, or whoever's cooking, "Can I please have the recipe? How do you make this so tasting so good? I didn't think it's possible with vegetarian or vegan diet." And so sometimes it kind of gets them, it just brings a seed, it just drops a seed of awareness that it's possible to have, you put love into food, and whether it's slightly cooked or the salads are raw, and most of the things are raw, but then there are some slightly cooked, like some meals that have soups and so warm. And so they just something shifts in their awareness and in their consciousness about food when they're here, and it gets me excited. Now with the families, I mostly, when I do have the programs for children, are mostly the children here. So the children usually bring their own food, and I only provide some snack time. And I had to do it that way because a lot of the the dietary restrictions, and I do not have time to be cooking while I'm engaged with them in activities. So I think I mentioned on a previous podcast episode that even with that, the children are these children these days, they are born with some sensitivities, which is a good thing, because the parents are having to deal with that, and they're having to look at other ways of eating. So some of the children come in with knowing. They just come in and they will say to the parents, "I can't have this, I can't have that, I don't like this, I don't like," even if the parents are pushing a particular, like, I don't know, eat chicken please, or you need protein, and the child will say, "I'm sorry, I can't have this." And so I have seen children some children brought the snack, and they were supposed to be healthy gummies or something, but they had coloring, right? So again, they had colors. And then another child was very aware, and she said, "You should not be eating." They were teaching the other. She was saying to them, "This is food coloring, is not good for you. Did you know?" And she had like a whole research laid out. And that made me smile, because some of them are very aware and very knowledgeable, and whether, they're teaching the other kids. So at that level, I engage with food. Personally, I love to use intermittent fasting, and I love to notice how my body feels every day from having less energy to process through the digestion. And it's something that it's naturally happened to me for years now, and I appreciate that. So I love the topic today with feasting and fasting. I think it's great. Thank you for choosing that to share with us.
Oh, you're so welcome. We're going to go into that right now. I wanted to already set up the background first of what we deal with on a daily basis as human beings. So we've got to really have a strong sense of self in order to be able to go the opposite way. So is it even necessary to go either way? So let's think about celebrations. Huge topic for me, celebrations. How do we celebrate what we call the high points of our lives, or moments of that we want to celebrate and think about and really get together? And one of my issues is that when we do these celebrations, we totally forget who we are. And as Grant was saying, there are many different reasons why we eat. The question, too, is also, what are we eating? What do we choose to eat when we do eat? And do we really eat? Because that's another topic that I will get to, probably not today, but because we're doing this particular series 3 times this month. So today, next Thursday, and the Thursday after, because it's so much to go into, I'd like to look into feasting. So I find it interesting that most cultures, not all, for big holidays, there's a huge feast involved. And some cultures, there's fasting involved. So you either fast or you feast to celebrate. Which do you choose to do, and why? Now, a lot, of course, depends on the culture. I grew up in a culture where we fasted for holidays. So I am used to fasting. There are other cultures, and then afterwards we usually feast by when the holiday is over. That's how you end the holiday, by feasting, which I'm totally against, because after you fast, why are you feasting so much? You're just overloading the body. However, not, it works for some people. It doesn't work for me, but it works for some people. I do not think there are strict rules and regulations to follow. We have to restore our bodies to the point of knowing, where we know exactly who we are and we know what our body needs, and we satisfy the body's needs, are not some regulations or rules that we read about or see other people doing. And that's my work. I help people to restore their inner knowing. And I think most of us here do in some way or other. So it takes a while. You don't just know yourself overnight, although some people do. It's quite amazing to me. And children most certainly do. Children absolutely know who they are. However, when a child is brought into this world, are they subjected to fasting or feasting principles? Because if the child is breastfed, it all comes from the inner knowing. It comes from instinct. It comes from intuition when that child wants to eat from that breast. And that's the beauty about breastfeeding, that there's no fasting or feeding frenzy, because the child knows exactly when. Now, a lot of mothers, because they have to work outside the home, they then will pump their own milk and put it in a bottle. Unfortunately, most of these bottles are plastic and has BPA and whatnot, unless they find, of course, and they're now, thank goodness, bottles that are made of glass. So I'm not going to say that mothers should not do that. If a mother has to work and has nothing else to do, and there's no way that they can take the child to work because there are no childcare facilities where they can take a break and then go and breastfeed the child and come back to work, which is what we need, I think. Nevertheless, then unfortunately, the timetable for feeding is not according to the child's own inner timetable and inner yearnings. And so we are being taught that we have to feed 3 times a day. There must be breakfast, which most people ignore, thank goodness, and there must be lunch and there must be dinner. I cannot tell you how many times people are shocked that I don't do that when they find out. I don't usually go around and speak about it. But when I'm being interviewed and people ask me these questions, and they ask me, what do you eat for breakfast? What do you eat for lunch? What do you eat for dinner? And they just take it for granted that I do, that I have somehow subscribed to this theory. I do not, in any way, shape, or form, subscribe to this theory, because my inner body is what rules me. So, for example, I was meant to go on a 3-day fast, starting this past Saturday, and come off of it yesterday. But unbeknownst to me, I needed to take it into today, and I didn't realize that. But I sure, when the time came for me to break the fast, which I did with these scrumptious oranges, I made orange juice out of them, and then I ate them as well. What ended up happening is that I also had a lot of emails to respond to. And some people were furious they hadn't heard from me in 3 days. For some of them, it was 4 days. Even though I keep telling them, you won't hear from me on Saturdays ever. So what happened is that I really focus on mindful eating. So when I ate these oranges and when I juice them, I do so mindfully. So of course I'm not online. So that takes me even more offline. But then I went online afterwards, after I thought it was digested, more or less, because they're very fast to digest. And then I totally lost time and space, any conception of it. Before I knew it, the day had gone and I had not drank the second glass of juice. So I inadvertently went into that. And this morning I didn't have time to eat. So it just, inadvertently kept going, the fast kept going and going. And I didn't feel a need to eat. And that's what's important. And in truth, I usually get cucumbers to eat as well when I want them. So I'll eat. I only eat things that are very hydrated when I come off of a fast. However, this time I wanted to check and see what would happen. So I just made these. These are my pecan balls. And I'm going to try and see how my body will respond to these, because there was a time when it wouldn't. It only wanted fresh fruits. But this is a mixture of raw pecans, raw coconut, of course, those divine dates, some of the orange juice, and it has one more ingredient which I can't remember. Oh, and then of course nutmeg and the spice bush. For those of you who don't know the spice bush, I have a spice bush extract. I use that in lieu of vanilla, because there's a whole lot of problems with vanilla, which you're going to be hearing hopefully next week. But I've got to tell you about this. Is critical that you know this about vanilla, but that's another topic for another day because I really want to get into feasting and fasting today. So, one of the things that I realize is that I'm not ready to feast, and my body's telling me that. So I made this in case I am because I've got a very tight schedule for the next 2 days. And then today and tomorrow. And then I go back into fasting, my usual fasting, which is on Saturdays when I always fast once a week. Now, there are people like Sabina who once a month, she fasts for 5 days. Is this correct, Sabina? And do you ever feast?
Yes, this is something I was doing in between 2018 and 2024. So actually, currently I am not fasting, but I committed to do this over a 6-year period. Like every month, I would take 5 days where I fast on water only. And then slowly I transition back into foods. I start with fruits on the first day, and then I introduce some salads, and then eventually denser food. But it's always for me a slow transition into the fast and out of the fast. And yes, I do feast, but not after the fast.
Great. And what I want the audience to think of now, and I would want you to start thinking of the audience and make some comments if you wish to, is have you ever fasted? And if so, did you enjoy it? And if not, why not? And if so, if yes, why yes? Because it's become such a natural part of me now that I don't even realize I'm doing it. That's what's happened in the last 2 days when I meant to come off of this. And I even started coming off by having the orange juice. And I still have the oranges, and I better use them soon, otherwise they'll be spoiled. So one of the things that I want to go back to is the idea of feasting at holiday time. Did you, and this is to my co-hosts, did you grow up in families where you feasted excessively at holidays? When, where, why, and with what? So let's go first to Grant.
Yes, Dory. Certainly in Australia, people are into feasting for holidays. Christmas time would be, just eat fatty, a lot of animal-based foods and big salads and some fruit salads and things like that. But largely it was slabs and slabs of meat and and pastry kind of things and sweet cakes. And so people would eat until they fell asleep, basically, and they'd spend the Christmas afternoon asleep in their chairs, staring at a television that they're not watching. So it was a beautiful time for family and connection, but it was also disconnection because there was also alcohol, and people were developing a terrible relationship with food, and for what I don't know. It wasn't focused on deep connections between family and opening up and sharing vulnerable, open, honest things with authenticity, building all those beautiful qualities of openness and sharing with close ones.
Thank you for that. And I would like to now bring in Cesarina. Tell us about, I know that I think you grew up in Romania. What's the difference between the feasting there and the feasting in Canada that you see?
Oh, wow. It's a great question. Never had this question before. So, well, the culture in Romania loves feasting. Let's just say that as a young child, I had a hard time with all the food. It's like my body wanted to say stop. I can't eat, but they make you eat. They make you eat this, whether it's vegetable, too many vegetables, or too much of this, or too much. Of course, there's meat and a lot of this holiday stuff, and a lot of the fatty diet, very much based on protein, animal protein and fats and all of this. So however we grew, what was a blessing for me, we had lots of gardens, and we have a greenhouse. We still do. My sister is still continuing that beautiful work there with a greenhouse, and we had fruits and beautiful fruits and vegetables everywhere. So I remember as a child I would complain that I can't take all this eating. I felt like I couldn't tell, but now I remember the feeling. I felt like food was stuck in my belly and I couldn't get it out, And so I didn't know how to ask my parents to, you can't tell them not to cook or not to feed, but you could say, hey, it's too much food. And so I remember just doing a lot of movement, which helped me since I was very young. I love movement, and I would do a lot of jumping rope and a lot of things that facilitated for me to feel better, to be able to eliminate all this, digest all this food, because I felt like I could feel the difference. How before, when I was hungry, before I would eat, I would be so full of energy as a child, and I remember after eating them, because the meals are so long and they take, it's like in Italy probably, they take like 2 hours for a whole meal, from appetizer and then this course one and then the salad. And course one is usually like soup, and then there's the salad, and then there's the main course, and then there's the dessert, and then there's something else, and they take forever, and you feel like you're stuffing yourself. And so I don't know if everyone in Romania is a foodie, but maybe I grew up with foodies, but my parents were just part of that cultural training, and trained in that way. So I remember doing a lot of movement, and I remember going in the gardens a lot, and I would just go and eat the raw. I remember plucking the leaves from the lettuce, and it was just so fresh, or getting the fruits or the strawberries and getting the nectarines, and I think that's how I made up for some of the again, I wasn't trained. Nobody was there to tell me you should have a combination of this and this, or have the raw veggies and fruits. But I was reaching for them. I knew intuitively I need to put this in my body, and it was helping. So I have those memories that I haven't thought of till now that you asked me to read. And so, yeah, unfortunately, not all memories are good about growing up in the culture with too much food, but the memories of gardening and helping my grandmother with the fruits and the vegetables and eating some of this raw, fresh produce were delightful. And I'm imagining that the world needs more of that, and we should dream that way and keep sharing that is important. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Cesarina. Unfortunately, most children are brought up this way. Pete, can you tell us of your own experiences, please, growing up around holiday time and the feasting or fasting that went on?
There's, I remember, let's just say, potentially from the age of about 5 was more prominent, really. Of course, there would be a lot of eating. So obviously the program that's passed down, we would be celebrating like most people. But from the age of 5, we used to visit my mum's parents, and they had a beautiful big garden growing their own food. So until that time, I had no awareness about real food. And I realized, let's just say in retrospect, on my journey, how predominantly that encouraged me, I suppose, on my journey in the food choices I had. So a plum, as Cesarina mentioned, the plum, the apple trees, the peach trees, I had no awareness where that all came from. So I think I didn't even visit a beach till I was 7. So the sea was alien. So, I had that kind of upbringing. So we would feast, and I would remember I could not get enough. And I would say, as Grant mentions, of course, from trauma, an emotional, habitual way of eating. And if I'm honest with, let's just say we all have a unique consistency with, I would say, a sensitivity I had or I've rekindled. I wanted to shut that down. I didn't want to feel all these things, that I hadn't been guided to interpret, or let's just say, having the knowledge, the education, true education, esoteric kind of education. So we feast. I remember in my teens, 16, I would be visiting my friends, having a roast dinner at 12, going back to my house. My older sister was maybe 28 at the time, having roast dinner there, and then going back at 8 to my friends having supper. So I feasted, So So yes, very much feasted. I got very much into the roast dinners. I prided myself on creating the roast dinners. So if I hadn't gone on my journey, I don't think I would be here. Actually, I was shown as well. I'm sure I would be double my weight. So you know, that's my journey really. So predominantly, the very similar to everyone else. Imprinted a program of consuming more, as Grant has mentioned in the previous podcast. Not to be harsh on people, but it is a form of self-abuse. So, and there's so much love. This is the problem: emotional love from our mom and dad, and this beautiful food, and they've made it for hours or half of the day. My gran would be in the kitchen all day creating this beautiful food, and veg I never knew about. So it comes with so much love. So what I've managed to do is let's just say transmuted, still having the love, emotional attachment to better foods that don't have the more carcinogenic poisons in them, really. So I can still keep the love.
Great, thank you so much. So, Sabina, did you grow up in a feasting household at holiday times? And if so, what exactly was being used for that feasting?
So I grew up in southern Germany, and like any good southern German meal has to have meat. Otherwise, it's not a real meal. So in any holidays, we would get together, and it's usually very dense. There's meat, potatoes, lots of bread, and of course, lots of beer as well. So I never enjoyed, even as a child, I thought it's just like overindulgence. And then at the end, everyone was kind of drunk, and I can't remember any pleasant experience I ever had dining with my family. And when I was 19, I actually became a vegan, eating mostly raw. So when we had family gatherings, I would bring my salad. And that always caused some remarks, such as you're not eating real food, or calling it a rabbit food, or you need to eat more meat to get more meat on your body. So I always get these remarks. At some point, I ignored it. I just focused, this is what I'm committed to. And then when I was here in the US, I was married to an Italian man. And as Cesarina mentioned, I got to experience those long Italian dinners. They sometimes went on. It's an all-day affair with the different courses and the espresso and the dessert and then the wine. And I remember in that time I was already very health conscious, and I would always bring my salad, of course, but they didn't let me just eat a salad. I had to have something. So they made some special vegan meals for me, which was, of course, much denser than what I usually eat. It's usually fried in a lot of olive oil and all kinds of stuff. So just to be polite, I ate a little bit of their food that they made for me. And I always remember on the way home, I was sitting in the back seat, in the side passenger seat, and I felt like I'm passing out on the way home. It was like just exhaustion I felt just from the meal. And my partner always had to have an espresso in order to drive. And I remember the next day just never feeling good. So I got to experience these heavy, dense meals, and it's just not for me. I don't feel good. And for me, life is all about feeling good and having great energy. So that's where I stand right now. And right now, I'm not participating in any family dinners anymore. And that was my choice that I made.
Thank you, Sabina. So what I'm seeing overall from everybody here is that growing up, all these feasting on feast days, I call them feast days, not holidays. I like to call things what I see they are. I no longer call them holidays. I call them feast days, or over feasting days, or overindulgent days. So what I see is that in one's family and the circle that with whom one does these feastings, most people go comatose. They go comatose. They go into almost this sphere where they no longer exist, and it's almost like they're no longer present. Yes, because we have overly drained our bodies of energy, and we've not given space in our bodies for digestion. So, a big issue with me when I work with clients is I first help them to create spaciousness in their lives. When I say spaciousness in their lives, I mean their thoughts, their feelings, and also their physical being. So this sense of spaciousness, I think, is very important. But when we feast like this, we overindulge, which is seen as something exciting to do. And like Grant and Pete said, or was it Pete and Cesarina? There's a big part of it that is based on love. And that's how the family shows us love, is to make us comatose. Is to use fasting and feasting to make us comatose. But the fasting doesn't happen. So we don't even get to indulge in fasting, because here's the problem. We're not just talking about one meal. We're talking about people eating breakfast. Now, fortunately, some people skip breakfast. Then some people, they must eat at lunch, and then they must have dinner. Now, what happens in the human body when we do that? Most meals, especially if you're talking about a cooked meal that is based on the animal kingdom, we need about 72 hours to digest everything. So for 72 hours from the moment it enters our mouth to the moment it passes through our anus. Yet, what do we see most people doing? This is what I find really interesting. Most people do this. If in between all of that overindulging, they also do this. And people say I skip breakfast in the mornings, but in truth, this is what they're having. And they're having it on their way to work. Look at her hand. She's supposedly driving. Now, she could be at a stop sign, yes. But she has, what is that in her hand? I don't recognize it. I have never seen this grow anywhere. I have never seen this in the wild animal kingdom. I don't see animals eating this. But this has become food. And if she doesn't eat this, she says, but I'll be hungry, as if hunger is something to avoid. And if we're not doing that, then we're encouraged to do this. Now, what is this person doing? Texting or looking up something on the map and supposedly eating and driving at the same time. Now, this person could have pulled over and is doing this, but most people actually do this. They do it all at once. And this is something that is accepted. The idea that you could use this time while you're driving or going somewhere else to fast a little bit and give your body time to digest what it is that you ate the night before, the day before, whatever, for at least 72 hours is something that we just do not wish to even consider. We also don't consider the fact that when we eat, we need to eat mindfully, consciously, with beautiful things, and in a place where only things from nature and by ourselves. This is not considered anything that's acceptable, because you're eating by yourself, but that's really the only way to eat mindfully. At the beginning, start practicing. Eventually, you know how to do it with others being around. But this is something that is not seen at all. When you're eating look at all of this. Do you see all of the colors of nature there? Do you see all the vibrancy there? And yet, that is not something that is encouraged. But what is encouraged instead is this. And it's so accepted that people won't even think, but I'm hungry. I have to eat something. I have to do something. Then why not eat something like this? Take time, wait till you can sit down and feast on something like this if you don't wish to fast. Because if you're not eating something, then you're just giving your body a time to digest whatever it is that you ate last. Or eat something like this, which is all from nature. Actually, much more beautiful, I think, than this. Here I see no colors, no vibrancy. I don't see anything to get me energized. But when you eat some soup that's vibrant and just full of the life force, or if you eat something like this straight from nature, look at all the vibrancy and the colors, and look how incredibly beautiful and enchanting something like this is. Why don't you just wait and allow yourself to eat things like this? By the way, this is from my repertoire. These are the things that I make for clients. But it doesn't really matter. The point is that If you look at all of them, you'll see, what do you see that's common with all of them? It's not overabundance. Can you see how small this plate is? Can you see that these glasses are also small? We need to break the cycle. We need to break the cycle of overindulging over everything to feel that we belong, and that's part of being loved because our parents did it lovingly, and they do it lovingly. I agree with Pete in that. However, look at the size of these. Each person takes one of this, and this is the meal. If you brought this to one of those feast days and you say, that's it, that's the meal, just one of these is the meal, people would think you're absolutely absurd because you're meant to be celebrating. But it's Christmas, but it's Thanksgiving, but it's this, but it's a picnic, da da da. You need to do this, but nobody will criticize you for doing this. No one will say to you, oh my goodness, I am really concerned for you about this. But they sure will say that I am concerned for you when you end up showing them your fridge. When your refrigerator looks like this, they're very concerned for you. And when you bring something like this to a party, the look is, what in goodness's name is that? And what am I supposed to do with that? So this is what I usually bring when I come to a party or something else. And I make sure that not only is it vibrant, but it looks, the colors. I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've had people finish this before I was able to give it to everyone at the table. And look, you know why? Because intuitively we're attracted to freshness. It's what Trizarina was saying, going into the garden and eating those fresh fruits and vegetables that she just picking the lettuce that was fresh, because you are in tune with that. Your inner beauty, your inner strength, the inner voice of you is in tune with that. I'm not saying that you cannot sit down every now and then at a holiday and eat a gourmet meal like this. Now, this is still fresh and vibrant and uncooked. This is a meal that I prepare for my clients when they are have a holiday or people coming over, because they always tell me, what am I supposed to serve them? So it's not that we're asking you not to feast. We're asking you instead to think about who you are and what's going on with this body. So digestion starts in the mouth. It goes down the esophagus. Have you ever taken the time and taken the pleasure and indulged? If you want indulgement, here's indulgement. To feel everything as it starts going down your throat. After having spent some time in the mouth, using the tongue to roll everything like a ball before it goes down, using the teeth and also the saliva to digest the sugars in there, first of all. Because real food has an element of sugar in there. It's the sugar that nature intended us for it to have. So the party starts outside before we even take it into our mouth. So the party for me starts by looking at this. So when we eat, we're meant to feast. Even after we fast, we're meant to feast. So after my fast, I spend time looking at this huge bowl of these, and I did post it on social media, this bowl, huge bowls. I had 3 huge bowls of these oranges. I smelled them, and I could smell them naturally because after fasting, my senses of smell, which usually are strong anyway, was so much more heightened. My sense of hearing, of seeing. I was able to see without any of that film in front of your eyes. If you ever fast long enough, you'll see that one of the things that you'll be most shocked at is how the film moves away from your eyes. And I'm going to ask Sabina to explain if that ever happened to her, and also anybody else of the co-host who has fasted long enough for that to happen. But also, the meal begins outdoors, outside of your body, because we need all 5 senses involved in digestion before it even gets into the esophagus. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing because we've got so much more that we want to talk about and time is running late. But this is why we're taking 3 days to do this, because feasting and fasting are not separate. We feast with our eyes, we feast with our nostrils, with a sense of smell, we feast with our hearing. You can hear the sound of this as you first bite into it, or you can put it behind your ears. If you fasted long enough and you just put this by your ears, you can actually hear. Can you hear this? I can hear this. And you can also start eating from them, because we eat with all our senses. The reason why most of us end up doing this is because we feel depleted and exhausted, but also because we feel undernourished. We are not nourished. Our senses have not been nourished. We do not have a strong sense of having used our nostrils. So the sense of smell feels like it has not been satiated. And I can assure you that after she's finished eating, and she's not really eating, she's just throwing things down her throat, or this person is finished, their sense of smell will not feel nourished and nurtured in any way, shape, or form. Also, you will find that your hearing is nourished, and also your sight has been nourished by these gorgeous colors. Notice our colors or brand colors are the same colors as oranges and citrus and most fruit on purpose, because being healthy means we need all of the colors of the rainbow. And we also need vibrancy. We need to pull in vibrancy, and the sight as also helps us to do that. Touch is very important. When you open this and you put this on your tongue, oh my goodness, the sense, the texture, it takes, and the smell and the sight and the sound of it takes in a whole different level of excitement. It takes you there, but you cannot do this as long as you are doing this and you are used to just completely sedating your need for real food and to be nourished and nurtured when you do this. So, what I'm going to ask my co-host right now is to give me an example of you when you fasted at some point in your life, and if you didn't, and there are different kinds of fasting methods, whether intermittent or not. What did you see was different for you afterwards? Like today, my energy is off the roof, really and truly skyrocketing. So I have to calm myself down a bit because I am so excited to be alive and to be present in this world today and to also have you all on here. So I'm going to ask first Sabina.
So I had so many powerful experience with fasting. First of all, yes, the senses were heightened. I just experienced everything on a much deeper level. And also in terms of the joy I experienced. I remember one experience, I was just after a fast, I was suddenly bubbling out of laughter, was just oozing out of me. And I was just laughing for no reason. And I really got this feeling, being happy for no reason. Nothing needs to happen for joy or happiness to show up in life. It just comes naturally through you. And that's many times I experienced that with fasting. And just also similar, like you said, Dorit, when I introduce food again for the first time, it's really like making it a meditation, really taking in the texture, the taste, the flavors, and the smell, everything, because everything is so heightened and it's such a beautiful experience that we often miss when we eat so fast. We're not even present. So it's really learning to be present with eating and making it like a sacred act and really enjoying and taking the time. And yeah, in general, it's just an upgrade. That's what I felt every time I fasted. I felt an upgrade in everything. Also, the way I just see life. Somehow, I felt everything. My perspective is much clearer. I'm just more clearer who I am, why I'm here, what I'm here to do. So it's about tuning into a more subtle frequency, a more subtle energy level, and just in general, the happiness, the joy, and the inner radiance, everything gets upgraded when we fast. And it's about releasing the density that we all hold in our system, not just the dense energy, but also it affects our aura, that what we're sending out, the frequency we're sending out is actually refined through fasting. So there's so many great benefits. And I just want to share these few.
Thank you. I love that you used the word upgrade because that's exactly what fasting is about. But when we feast, we never feel like we've upgraded our lives in any way, shape, or form. So, with that said, Chizurina, would you come on and give us your experiences, please?
So I have many experiences, but I'll pick one. When I used to live in West Africa, Niger, and teach at an international school there, it wasn't by choice. It was because the schedule. I started to. It became a choice. It was meditating a lot and teaching yoga after school. And I was, excuse me, I was had to walk to school in the desert in the hot sand every morning, really early, be there at 7 a.m. and start the day before the children arrive, just meditating, receiving energy. And I would just simply start my day with an apple or something so simple. That was my breakfast. And I will bless, of course, I would use words to bless the apple or whatever, the water. And because the water frequency changes, as you know, when you speak loving words to it. And then I was so busy with the children until 3 p.m. I didn't have, if I had a half hour maybe for lunch, I would have a banana, something, again, very simple. And most of it raw. My meals were most during the school days. And then I would go home later in the evening, walk back in the desert in the sand. And I remember making myself, it was very filling, making myself, buying the mangoes at the market and making myself just with the mango, pureeing the mangoes and adding cardamom or cinnamon, whatever, and making myself these, I call them smoothies, but they're just simply pureed fruit. And they're delicious. And it was not much of cook food, but it was I felt like I had this intermittent experience of fasting, because a lot of the times I may just have a very simple fruit, and then through the day nothing, and then or maybe one fruit in the afternoon and nothing for the rest of the day until the next morning. And so I would have a lot of energy, just like everyone has been talking about the heightened senses, everything. I would feel energy and frequency at a brand new level. And I was shocking myself, because I was thinking, well, I should feel, in a normal sense, I should feel exhausted and tired. I've been, mentally engaged with these children, young children, all day long. But it was actually the opposite. So I'll never forget those days. And I call the days in the wilderness, the days in the desert. So it was amazing what the body taught me in those days, and about food and energy and everything. So frequency.
I absolutely like days in the desert and days in the wilderness. Oh, that appeals to me so much. Pete, could you come on, please, and give us your own experience?
Hi, yes, done quite a few different fasts. I would say only over the last 9 years I have done them more correct. So important how you go in and how you come off. So I look back on the early days of the fast, and I just kind of like, didn't really come off very wisely. So my most epic one would be, I didn't know nothing about dry fasting. It was truly alien to me. So my first one was a 3-day, and I was still working. So that's nothing, not even brushing the teeth, not even a shower, not even water on my skin. And then the next year I did another 3-day, and then the following year Beltane, I did an 8-day. And after that 8-day, the most epic for me, there's been many stories, but I could not sleep no more than 3 hours for about 2 months. And the energy was, let's just say, off the scale. So what I realized that I had to integrate. I'm more integrated now in terms of what do you do with that time. Yeah, of course, some of us here can say, yeah, we are you may be more well rehearsed, but at that time I wasn't very well rehearsed. More now I can see what I can do with it. So also I felt like, wow, this feels like I've just incarnated another level of incarnation. I can look back at the other fasts, like any ache or pain had just gone. Any ache, pain I had in my body had gone. This was with a pure green fast, maybe 13 years ago, then a water fast. They all ended around 13 days, and then I might go on to a lighter fast. So the most epic for me was the dry fast. Aches and pains, what supported me a lot was having an infrared lamp around my kidneys. Totally could not believe the support that gave me. So that eased whatever potential trauma was being released from my kidneys, which I quite easily could have stopped because of whatever belief I may have had. But what I would sort of say, visiting trauma after trauma. So, the journey for me is sometimes being very aware that we're inviting, or people might judge this how I would judge these things in the beginning. It would be just having the conscious awareness. It would be just triggering traumas. I see it now. I see it with other people. So what we're actually doing is bringing them into clearing some of their traumas. So it's so they've been all epic words can't really define them.
Thank you so much, Pete. And yes, I agree with you on the feeling of being reincarnated, like a fresh start. Grant, please come on in. Thank you.
Yes, Dorit. I like to eat 2 meals a day. I rarely, I do still eat 3 meals sometimes, but I feel best when I eat twice a day. And that extends, some people call it intermittent fasting. I don't think of it that way, but it's just extending the night. People have 8 hours without eating when they sleep, and I'm just kind of extending that period, usually basically skipping breakfast. But I did a 29-day supervised water fast where I had nothing but water for 29 days back in 2008. So it's been like nearly 17 years now. And that was a profound experience in my life. And it may sound really extreme, but only beautiful things happened. 6 months after the fast, I was taking hours and hours, like multiple hours off my ultramarathon running times. And from resting and then coming back from that without changing my running techniques or training or anything like that. So that said a lot about the value of resting your body. It was the first time I'd ever let myself do nothing as my activity for those 29 days where I just rested. And one way that I rested was by not eating food and just drinking good, clean water. I broke the fast with watermelon. It was the most profound food experience of my life because, like everybody else said, your senses get heightened when you fast, and it gets heightened towards things that are truly healthful, like juicy watermelon, not a donut or the things that Dorit showed people eating in a car. But the biggest benefit for me from doing that 29-day water fast, which was a real pivotal moment in my life, was that I talk about it like I peeled away layers and I became myself, basically. I peeled away the shadows and things I was kind of hiding behind, and I came out of the fast. Basically, it's kind of like doing personal development. I went inwards. I spent a lot of time with myself, resting and doing nothing during this fast. So your mind is very active. You're sleeping a lot, and I really had a lot of personal realizations. I changed a lot of things in my life, my career, everything after that fast, based on all of those, all of that inner processing that finally had time to get processed by resting. So that personal development thing of becoming my true self and peeling away those layers, that was the most profound experience for me for fasting. So
Thank you, Grant. And next week, we're going to come back to you and start with you because you said so many things here that I would like to go into, but we are finished for today. And I want to say thank you to all of my co-hosts and to the audience. And next week, we're going to be continuing this, but we'll also be speaking about the physiology of fasting. And we're going to be looking at the physiology of feasting as well. So thanks, everyone. See you next week, same time, same place. Share this, please.